Hey everyone, tonight we're diving into the wild, smoky, and slightly sticky world of the Medieval Tavern, a place that's equal parts chaos, camaraderie, and questionable hygiene. This is where everyone in town ends up eventually. It's the unofficial news HQ, the place where a knight, a farmer, and a bard can all get equally drunk and equally pickpocketed. Taverns were way more than just bars. They were where danger, laughter, and disease mingled under one thatched roof. Before we get too comfortable, hit that like button and subscribe if you're into this kind of deep dive. Seriously, only subscribe if you enjoy what I'm doing here. It really helps. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how global this community is. Alright, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that authentic background hum. As in settle in, let's set the mood. Imagine you've just slogged through muddy streets that reek of horse, smoke, and something vaguely soup-like. It's either raining or just stopped, so everything's slippery, including your one good pair of shoes. You're tired, you're hungry, and you've barely dodged a cart piled with turnips. Twice. You need a drink, but how do you even find a tavern in medieval times? No neon signs, no Yelp reviews, no GPS. You've only got your ears. Follow the noise. Past the blacksmith hammering away, past the fishmonger hollering about eels, until you catch the sound of laughter, shouts, and someone butchering a song about a goose. There it is, a crooked building, leaning like even the walls have had too much to drink. Above the door is a wooden sign, so weathered you can barely make out if it's a barrel, a bear, or both. Either way, you've arrived. The front step is slick with spilled ale, and as you push open the heavy iron-hinged door, it groans. A sound so dramatic, it's practically its own entertainment. Instantly, you're hit with a wave of warm air thick with smoke, wet wool, stale beer, and something that might be meat. You made it. Inside, the ceiling is low enough to make tall people duck and drunks bang their heads. The floor is literally dirt, with a layer of straw someone optimistically put down to make things cleaner. It didn't work. Forget private booths or servers with meanness. Quiet conversation. Not here. Medieval taverns have two settings, and rowdy and closed, usually because of fire. You spot a spot on a crook bench by the fire, but it's wet with something you don't want to identify. Nearby, someone's shouting about a stolen chicken. Another guy's passed out holding a ladle, and there's a one-eyed dog gnawing a bone under a table like he pays rent. And this is just the entrance. As the heavy door slams shut behind you, darkness settles around you like a damp wool blanket, warm, itchy, and a little suspicious. Your eyes adjust. Candlelight flickers over soot-stained walls, making even the chairs look like they're ready to start a fight. There's a blazing hearth in the corner, doubling as both heat source and open flame hazard. Smoke drifts lazily through the room, because the chimney might be blocked by a dead crow. But the first thing that really hits you isn't the noise or the heat, it's the smell. A medieval tavern's scent is ale, intense. The top note is ale, warm and sore, splashed everywhere. Under that, sweat, human horse, and maybe something else. Add moldy bread, wet straw, and a hint of boiled onions, and you get a blend that no perfumer will ever try to sell. The tables are scarred with years of initials and knife marks, wobbling with stubborn pride. Benches creak under the weight of muddy boots and questionable life choices. The floor, as promised, is dirt, covered with straw meant to soak up spills, spit, and the occasional unconscious customer. Step carefully. One wrong move and your foot will find something best left undescribed. The crowd is alive. Laughter erupts in one corner. Two men argue about pig prices in another. A woman slams her mug so hard half her drink spills, and nobody even flinches. Someone at the next table stares at you like he's either pondering the universe or just forgot how chairs work. Someone sneezes. Half the room leans away. Despite the assault on your senses, there's something weirdly welcoming about it all. The tavern is alive, raw, rowdy, and totally unfiltered. It's the medieval community hub, no hygiene, 4 times the noise. You take your seat. It's a little damp and probably cursed, but it's yours for now. At first glance, the layout looks like someone arranged the furniture during an earthquake and just left it. No blueprint, no tidy bar, no cozy booths, just a jumble of tables, benches, barrels, and the occasional crate being used as a seat. Everything's either too close or too far away, depending on how many L's you've had. The hearth is the only real centerpiece. A roaring fire surrounded by people clutching mugs for warmth. The best seats are near the fire, everyone else makes do with ale. The bar is usually just a thick plank balanced on barrels, sagging under a mess of mugs, jugs and elbows. Behind it is the tavern keeper, pouring drinks, yelling orders, and shooting death glares at the guy who still hasn't paid for last Tuesday. No menace. You ask what's on offer and brace yourself. The answer is usually ale, or wait your turn. A rickety staircase leads to the upstairs rooms. If you look closely, you'll spot a boot hanging from the railing. Is it a decoration? A warning? Don't ask. Some taverns have a back room. Maybe it's for storage, maybe for gambling, maybe it's where the last person who annoyed the barmaid disappeared. Best not to be curious. The walls are stained with candle soot, the windows covered with greasy rags or animal hide, and every surface is polished by decades of elbows, boots, and spilled drinks. Maybe a chicken, despite the madness, or maybe because of it. It works. Everyone somehow knows where to go, when to shout, and when to duck. It isn't organized, but it's alive. Every tavern has a ruler, and it's not the lord or taxman, it's the tavern keeper. They might not have a crown, but make no mistake, they're in charge. Part chef, part server, part accountant, part babysitter, and sometimes bouncer, the tavern keeper takes no nonsense. If it's a man, he's probably barrel-chested, grizzled, and carved out of old leather and bad choices. If it's a woman, and it often is, she's sharper than a blacksmith's file and can silence a room with a single look. Either way, they've seen everything, heard worse, and cleaned blood out of straw before breakfast. Regulars get a nod, strangers get the side eye, and troublemakers get a tankard to the head. They keep tabs. Who's paid, who owes, who's pushing their luck, all without writing anything down. Medieval literacy might be rare, but tavern memory is terrifying. The keeper sets the mood. In a good mood, the place hums. In a bad mood, you drink fast and keep your jokes to yourself. They're the referee, the judge, and the first to grab a club if a fight breaks out. You don't mess with the tavern keeper. They also know everything. Who's in debt, who's cheating, who just rolled into town under a fake name. Need info? Bribe the keeper. Need protection? Sit close. Need a favor? Hope you didn't break a mug last week. Sometimes they have help. A son, daughter, spouse, or some orphan they took in. These helpers run drinks, mop floors, and try not to get trampled. So while the tavern feels like chaos, it's actually a delicate ecosystem, with the tavern keeper in the eye of the storm, keeping the ale flowing and roof from collapsing into an all-out brawl. You finally settle onto your creaky bench, dodging elbows and spilled stew. Your throat's dry, your boots are wet, and it's time for the main event, the drink. But don't expect a wine list or a sparkling glass. This is medieval drinking. Your options are limited, tepid, and potentially hazardous. Let's start with ale, the classic. Unfiltered, unpasteurized, and probably brewed in the back room where the dog sleeps. It's thick, cloudy, and may contain bonus bits, grain, yeast, or a stray mustache hair. It's not cold. Ice isn't a thing. You don't ask how old it is. You just hope for the best. Next up, mead. Honey wine. Sounds fancy, but it's usually sweet, strong, and sometimes explosive. If the keeper made it themselves, it could be delicious or taste like regret and be venom. Mead is for nobles, wedding guests, or that one bard who insists on being paid in gold or mead. Then there's cider, made from apples either freshly picked or found on the ground 3 weeks ago. It's sharp, tangy, and served in a mug that may double as a soup bowl. Wine. Technically, yes, but unless you're in southern Europe or the nobility's in town, it's probably watered down, soured, and delivered with a side of sarcasm. Good wine is for lords, bishops, and the merchant who just sold a wagon load of salt. As for water, bold choice. Half the time it's teeming with invisible death. Boiling costs fuel, and clean wells are rare. That's why even kids drink ale. It's not about the buzz. It's about not dying of dysentery before you hit puberty. No one's measuring shots or crafting cocktails. You drink from mugs of wood, clay, or tin, some still with traces of last night's stew. You raise your mug, sniff, sip. It's warm, bitter, and somehow just right. In a medieval tavern, if it's wet and doesn't kill you on the spot, it's a fine vintage. So, you've survived the drink. Barely. Now your stomach reminds you it's empty. Your last meal was mostly barley and regret. Time to eat. Don't expect a menu, a waiter, or anyone checking your allergies. You don't order food in a medieval tavern. You ask what's left and hope it's hot and only mildly mysterious. The star of the menu is usually pottage, a stew of grains, veggies, and whatever protein was lying around. It's been simmering in the same pot all week, with new ingredients added daily. If there's meat, congrats. It's probably rabbit, pigeon, or the chicken that got too close to the fire. If it's game, it might be delicious, or it might be aged and seasoned with desperation. Your bowl is wood or clay. Your spoon is your own, or your fingers. Most people bring their own knife. It's a BYO cutlery situation. Napkins. Just your sleeve or a communal rag that's seen things no rag should see. Bread is tough, dark, and heavy, a weapon as much as a food. If it's soft, it's fresh. If it's hard, it's last week's. Cheese probably smells like an old boot, and might be developing a personality. Sometimes there's salted fish or pickled eggs. A special just means there was too much of something lying around. Flavor, optional. Texture, unpredictable. Still, in the firelight, with noise all around and a bowl of something warm, it's hard to complain. It's filling, it's hot, and if you don't look too closely at what's floating in your bowl, it's even comforting. You're not here for fine dining. You're here to eat like a survivor. Once you're settled, you notice the real show, the people. A medieval tavern is the original social feed. Loud, messy, half-true, and everyone's oversharing. To your left, a red-faced farmer is deep into his fourth ale, retelling a story about his cow for the 10th time. He slaps your back like you're his best friend, or a stand-in for his usual drinking pig. In the shadows, a hooded stranger sips his drink slowly. Maybe a runaway monk, maybe a bandit, maybe just bad at small talk. Don't chat unless you want to disappear behind the stables. Near the hearth, a battered soldier is spinning tales of dragons, Frenchmen, and a talking sword. Clearly fake, but no one cares. His mug's full, and his audience is laughing. There's a merchant, sweaty and loud, shouting grain prices no one needs to know. He flashes gold coins, basically begging to be robbed. A pair of locals play dice, one cheating, the other letting him, probably saving the fight for when the ale runs out. In the corner, a bard strums a love song that sounds suspiciously made up on the spot. No one cares, he's in tune and wearing pants, which is already an upgrade from last night. Women move through the crowd, some staff, some working their own angles. They're sharp-eyed, confident, and not to be trifled with. They'll flirt, laugh, or knock your teeth out, depending on your mood. Kids dart between legs, swiping bread or coin. No one stops them. It's just how it goes. Everyone's watching, drinking, plotting, pretending not to notice the man passed out under the table. This isn't just a place to eat and drink. It's a living show, and tonight you're part of the cast. Forget lutes and ballads for a second. The real soundtrack of a medieval tavern is a symphony of chaos. It starts with the clink of mugs, dozens at a time, slammed together in celebration, negation, or just plain drunkenness. Some clang, some shatter, both get cheers. Then comes the laughter, big, wild, and contagious. Most of it makes no sense. A farmer laughs at his own hay joke, a knight giggles at the word pottage, and a monk wheezes every time someone says, "Duck, don't ask." Voices rise and pile on top of each other, each trying to shout the last, like roosters in a coop. And that, friends, is the medieval tavern, wild, unpredictable, and unforgettable. Here's bickering at every table, tall tales flying, arguments about taxes, and at least one guy twisting Bible verses to win a bet. The bartenders barking orders while swatting at flies, a barmaid shouting at a drunk who got a little too handsy, and somewhere in the background, someone's chanting, "Another round!" like it's a war cry. Over in the corner, the bard's wrestling a half-tuned lute that's missing 3 strings, strumming the same 4 chords on repeat, and launching into songs about lost loves, runaway chickens, or the local lord who once wore his trousers backward. No one really pays attention until he starts singing about someone in the room. Then, suddenly, everyone's listening, and things either get hilarious or dangerous. Drinks are spilled, someone burps loud enough to shake the rafters, and another patron tumbles off his bench but keeps chatting from the floor like it's all part of the plan. Dogs bark, a goat bleats, no one knows why there's a goat, but there always is, and chairs scrape across the dirt floor with thunderous energy. It's not peaceful, but it's got a rhythm all its own. Sometimes, the whole room goes quiet, not on purpose, just a random pause that lasts about 3 seconds. Then someone lets loose a fart worthy of legend, and the whole place roars back to life. This isn't just background noise, it's the pulse of the tavern, raw, wild, and completely alive. If you listen long enough, the chaos almost makes sense. There's a kind of music to it, a harmony born from disorder, and like everything else here, it only gets louder and wilder the longer you stay. With the owl flowing and the stew settling in your gut, the tavern changes. It becomes a medieval casino. No velvet ropes, just a whole lot more yelling. Gambling is the sport of choicing, everyone's in on it, from grizzled soldiers to barefoot kids with borrowed dice. No dealers, no rules, just a battered wooden table, a pile of copper coins, and the sense that someone's about to lose their shirt. Dice games are king. The dice are bone, wood, or whatever someone carved up in a spare moment. They clatter across tables like tiny thunder, and every roll is followed by a chorus of cheers, groans, and wild accusations of cheating or witchcraft. No one trusts the dice, but everyone still plays. Cards show up in fancier spots, hand-painted, thick, worn to the edges, and always missing a couple. The rules, flexible. Sometimes you want the highest number, sometimes you match symbols, sometimes you just make it up as you go. It's like poker, but with way more slapping involved. Wagers, everything from coins to mugs to actual livestock. Someone's betting a goat, someone else their boots, and the boldest soul bets his own freedom for the night. Spoiling, he lost. The regulars are slick, shuffling fast, rolling slow, and smiling just a little too wide. Cheating isn't just common, it's expected. A hidden die here, a marked card there, are helpful. Cough when the luck's running hot. If you win big, you buy a round or risk getting mugged in the alley. Lose badly, and you just smile, pretend it was on purpose, and edge your chair toward the exit. Other games pop up too. Arm wrestling, thumb wars, and the always popular, who can chug the most without passing out. The winner gets cheers. The loser earns a night under the table, and a headache that'll last until next market day. Even when no one's sure of the rules and the stakes are ridiculous, the energy is irresistible. In a medieval tavern, luck isn't just a game. It's a gamble with your money, your pride, and sometimes your pants. As the night rolls on, and the air gets thicker with heat and humidity, a new show begins. One made of stories, music, and a lot of confident nonsense. Story time, medieval style. The bard clears his throat in the corner, plucking at his battered lute, strings squeaking like old hinges. He's missing a few teeth, but not an ounce of swagger. With a dramatic wave, he launches into a ballad about heartbreak and heroics. A knight who fell in love with a mermaid and drowned heroically while reciting poetry. No one believes a word, but everyone listens anyway. That's how it works here. Truth is optional, but entertainment is everything. Around the room, other voices join in. Not bards, just locals emboldened by Al. One man swears he wrestled a bear and lived to drink about it. Another claims he saw a witch turn a cow into a goat. A third insists he's related to Charlemagne, on his mother's cousin's side. Every story starts with, "You won't believe this, but..." And they're right, we don't, but we want to. Tall tales turn into songs, mishaps into legends. Someone tells a joke so bad it circles back into being funny. Someone else recites a poem, almost certainly stolen from a monk's scroll. The crowd cheers, claps, or hurls bread, depending on the performance. If you're lucky, a travelling minstrel or professional scold might swing through. Masters of the craft, trading stories and songs for coins, a meal, or a spot off the floor. But even they know the rule. Never let facts ruin a good story. In this smoky room, with fire crackling and mugs sloshing, storytelling isn't just for fun. It's tradition. It's how you make friends, enemies, and the occasional lifelong drinking buddy. By midnight, half the tavern is acting out the tale of the one-legged knight who fought off 6 highwaymen with a ladle. You laugh, you cheer, and you forget it's all made up. In a medieval tavern, every liar's a legend, if their story's good enough. As the night deepens and the owl keeps coming, the mood shifts. The bard is halfway through his 3rd song about unfaithful shepherdesses, and suddenly, everyone's feeling just a little bit romantic. Welcome to medieval flirting, where subtlety has long since left the building. It starts with a glance, maybe one eye, squinting through a mead-fueled haze. A man with 2 teeth leans over and slurs, "My lady, your beauty burns brighter than the hearth," she answers, with a bread crust to the forehead. The room cheers. Others try their luck, offering to refill mugs, dropping clumsy compliments, or helping carry stews, which always ends up spilled anyway. If you're a woman here, staff, guest, or merchant, you're used to fending off would-be poets, arm wrestlers, and at least one guy who tries to impress you by balancing a knife on his nose. Sometimes it works. Usually, it ends with a black eye or a lighter purse. For those after something more than flirtation, courtesans work the room with expert grace, knowing who's got coin, who's got charm, and who'll pass out before making it upstairs. Transactions are discreet, but the drama is loud. Jealous lovers, always. Nothing sparks a tavern fight faster than a wandering eye, a lingering hand, or a jealous spouse catching someone laughing a little too hard at the bard's joke about bishops. Tables tip over, mugs become weapons, a bench snaps in half. Again. Yet, amid all this, sparks sometimes fly for real. A shy baker's daughter and a travelling stonemason laugh over stew, 2 drunk farmers bond over hating turnips, a monk accidentally flirts with a nun. Romance, medieval, style equal parts charm, chance and not falling face first into your bowl. You might win a heart, you might get slapped, but either way, you'll remember it, or hear about it the next morning. And then, inevitably, someone spills a drink, someone accuses someone of cheating at dice, or 2 people claim the same bench. Maybe someone makes a joke about someone's mother or goat or soup. It doesn't matter. Suddenly, the whole room explodes. A stool goes flying, a tankard crashes, someone yells, "Hold my bread," and hurls themselves into the chaos like a drunken missile. No one's surprised. Most don't even stop drinking. A bar fight isn't rare in the Middle Ages. It's practically expected, and while it sounds brutal, it's usually more slapstick than savage. Wild swings, missed punches, someone slipping and landing in someone's stew. Hair gets pulled, beards get yanked, shirts get ripped. The tavern keeper roars like a warlord, wielding a ladle in one hand and a club in the other. Sometimes people join in just because they see movement. Others cheer, place bets, or slide their drinks out of range. Weapons almost never appear. Everyone knows. Pull a blade, and you'll be banned from the one place, with warmth and all. Eventually, someone hits the floor and stays there. Someone else leans against the wall and decides that's a fine place to rethink their life. The fight fizzles out as suddenly as it started. Here's the thing. Once it's over, it's over. The fighters get separated, mugs get refilled, a song starts up, and within 10 minutes, everyone's laughing. Even the guy with the bloody nose. No grudges, no lawsuits, just new bruises, new stories, and maybe a fresh nickname like One-Eyed Arnold or Benchbreaker Bill. A good brawl is just another round of entertainment, messy, ridiculous, and weirdly bonding, as long as no one gets hurt too badly. So, the fight's done, the bard has passed out mid-ballad, your belly's full of mystery stew and slightly fermented cider, and it's time to find a place to sleep. Don't expect a soft bed and lavender sheets. This is a medieval tavern, not a spa. If there's lodging, it's up a creaky staircase, past slanted floors and beams low enough to test your skull. The rooms are small, cold, and definitely shared. Privacy isn't a thing. You're sleeping shoulder to shoulder with strangers, some snoring like church bells, others dreaming loudly in unfamiliar languages. Beds are, technically, straw, stuffed mattresses, thin, lumpy, and crawling with what locals fondly call companions. You lay down fully clothed, boots on, dagger under your pillow, not for comfort, but for security. Blankets are shared, smells are communal, and if anyone had garlic for dinner, someone always does. It's now part of your dreams. If you can't afford a room, or you've drunk yourself beyond carrying, you sleep by the hearth, on a bench, or curled up in a corner with a dog that may or may not belong to the tavern. You'll be stepped on, sneezed on, and probably used as a footrest. The tavern never really goes quiet. Even after the last mug is drained and the last brawl patched up, there's always someone muttering in their sleep, the fire popping, or a heroic fart echoing in the rafters. And yet, somehow, you drift off. It's not luxurious. It's not clean. But it's warm enough, safe enough. The fire wards off the worst of the cold. The tavern keeper keeps an eye on things with a club in hand, and the noise becomes a kind of lullaby, familiar, human, alive. You'll wake with a sore neck, a dry mouth, and a mysterious bruise. But you'll have slept in the company of travelers, rogues, farmers, and fools. No kings, no silence, just snoring straw, and the hope your boots are still there come morning. Dawn creeps in like an uninvited guest, poking pale light through shutters and straight into your eyes. The tavern's different now, not quiet, but quieter in that exhausted way. You open one eye, someone's boot is on your chest, someone else is mumbling about sheep taxes. The bard's snoring under a table, clutching his lute. A chicken hops across the floor, pecking at a crust. No one even wonders where it came from. The fires burn down, leaving the room cold and smoky. A few early risers groan and stretch, looking like they've survived a battle. One guy sits up, looks around, and just lies back down with a sigh. The tavern keeper is already up, of course, banging mugs, sweeping up, and reheating something in a pot that smells both inviting and slightly threatening. He bangs a ladle against a mug. Up or out, that's the morning alarm. No breakfast buffet. If you're lucky, there's leftover pottage, thicker than last night. Rewarmed bread, watered down ale, but no one's got the energy to complain. Some folks just dunk their heads in a barrel outside and call it good. You check your pouch, 2 coins and a button. Not bad. Your boots, still here, the one's got a bite mark. A win. New faces trickle in. Farmers, travellers, folks who need a drink before facing livestock, taxes, or worse, their neighbours. The tavern stirs again, waking up like a great, groggy beast. Someone starts retelling last night's chaos, and already the story's changed. Now there were 2 fights, and the bard summoned a ghost. Everyone nods like it's gospel. The night was wild, the morning's rough, but you made it. You've survived the sweat, the smoke, the sticky floors, the shouting, the flirting, the stew, and maybe even a flying bench. And through all that, one thing stands out. The Medieval Tavern wasn't just a bar. It was the heart of the community. In a world with no phones, no newspapers, no social media, the tavern was where the news travelled. Merchants brought gossip from distant ports, soldiers told stories from the front, and bards stitched the whole place together with songs, true or otherwise. This was where people connected. Farmers drank with craftsmen, pilgrims broke bread with thieves, strangers became friends, or at least drinking buddies for the night. Here, social lines blurred, rumours were born, alliances struck, and grudges fueled seconds or buried, depending on how the dice rolled. Deals were made, contracts sealed over splinters and spilled cider. It was a courtroom, a confessional, a stage. You could get a job, lose your wallet, get married, or start a feud all in one evening. But more than that, the tavern offered relief from the cold, from the grind, from the endless seriousness of medieval life. For a few hours, you could sit by the fire, hear a bad joke, sing a worse song, and forget just how tough life was outside. Even if the ale was warm, the bed was itchy, and the pottage had more bones than broth. The tavern gave you something you couldn't buy anywhere else, the feeling of being alive, together. Because in an age where anything could take you, disease, war, winter, the tavern was a place to belong. When you stepped inside, you weren't just buying a drink. You were buying a story, a moment of connection, and maybe, if you're lucky, a place to sleep by the fire. Long before there were cafes, pubs, or coffee shops, there was the tavern. And for one wild, messy, unforgettable night, it was home. Loud, gritty, real, and utterly unforgettable. Before she became ancient Egypt's most iconic face, immortalized in that limestone bust with regal cheekbones and an enigmatic, confident gaze, Nefertiti was a woman wrapped in mystery. Her name means, the beautiful one has come. But where did she come from, really? No one can say for sure. Some think she was the daughter of a powerful official named Ai, maybe even Akhenaten's sister. Others say she was a foreign princess, sent to Egypt in a political match. Her origins are debated, but her influence, that's undeniable. Nefertiti bursts into Egypt's story like a bolt of lightning, sudden, dazzling, and transformative. She didn't enter Akhenaten's life as a background queen. She was his partner in a reign that would open centuries of tradition. Together, they scrapped the old gods and put the sun disk, Aten, at the center of everything. It was radical, even heretical, and Nefertiti wasn't just watching from the sidelines. She led ceremonies, made offerings, and in some art, she's shown literally smiting enemies, a role usually reserved for pharaohs themselves. Unlike other queens, often shown in the shadows, Nefertiti was front and center. she appears in more artwork than Akhenaten himself, never as a passive figure, but as a commanding presence, sometimes even larger than life. In a culture where pharaohs were living gods, her closeness to Akhenaten, both spiritually and politically, hinted at something more. Maybe she wasn't just queen, maybe she was co-ruler. But that kind of rise comes with friction. Egypt wasn't ready for such upheaval. The old priesthood hated losing their power. The capital moved to a brand new city, Akhetaten, now Amarna, leaving the old ways behind. And through all this, Nefertiti was right there, her image carved into temple walls, her name sung in hymns to the sun. Yet for all her visibility in life, her death is almost a magic trick. She vanishes. No tomb, no mummy, no confirmed ending, just silence. It's as if history, after spotlighting her brilliance, suddenly turned away. Maybe that's where her legend truly begins. To understand Nefertiti's meteoric rise, you need to meet the man at the center of the storm, Pharaoh Akhenaten. He wasn't born with that name. He started as Amenhotep IV, another prince in a 1,000-year royal line. But something changed in him. Was it inspiration, madness, or both? When he took the throne, he turned away from the mighty god Amun and declared a new truth. There was only one god worth worshipping, the sun, Aten. This wasn't just a new religion. It was an earthquake that shattered the foundations of Egyptian society. Imagine a culture built on temples and rituals, suddenly told their gods were false and their traditions obsolete. Akhenaten didn't just preach monotheism, he enforced it. The temples of Amun were shut, his name was erased, statues destroyed, whole cities abandoned. In their place, Akhenaten created Akhetaten, a new city dedicated to Aten, where the sun would rise between cliffs and flood the city in holy light. And through it all, Nefertiti wasn't just by his side. She was an active force, seen making offerings and worshipping Aten as an equal. Their daughters appear with them in intimate family scenes, heads tilted toward the sun. Even the art style changed. Gone was the stiff, formal look. Now, there were scenes of the king and queen kissing, playing with their children, praying together under the sun's rays. Nefertiti was everywhere in this new vision, sometimes even overshadowing Akhenaten. Some historians believe she held real political power, possibly even acting as co-regent. There are even inscriptions referring to her as Nefer-Neferuaten, a name some think she used when ruling in her own right. Maybe Akhenaten shared his throne out of love, strategy, or necessity, but without Nefertiti, this revolution might have crumbled much sooner. But revolutions are fragile. The gods don't like being replaced, and the people were quietly waiting for the old order to return. By the height of her power, Nefertiti was more than a queen. She was an icon of beauty, divinity, and royal authority. Egypt had seen powerful women before, Ormuz, Nefertari, Hatshepsut, but Nefertiti's rule was different. She didn't take the throne by war or from the shadows. She helped reshape Egypt's soul, side by side with her husband, as a living goddess. She bore Akhenaten 6 daughters, Mereteten, Meketaten, Ankhesenpaten, and others, all frequently shown in family scenes, basking in the sun's rays. Oddly, there were no confirmed sons, a political puzzle in a kingdom obsessed with lineage. Was it fate, or something more? Some speculate Akhenaten had sons with other wives, or, more controversially, with Nefertiti herself. Theories abound, ranging from the plausible to the bizarre. What's certain is that motherhood was central to her image. In art, she's shown cradling her children, sharing tender, very human moments, a stark contrast to the distant, godlike pharaohs of old. But her image wasn't just maternal. In several depictions, Nefertiti wears the blue crown reserved for kings, shown smiting enemies, riding chariots, making offerings on her own. These weren't just symbolic. They signaled a queen preparing for something more than partnership, maybe preparing to rule alone. As Akhenaten's health declined, whether from genetic issues, stress, or something else, Nefertiti may have taken on even more power. But this is where the record blurs. In the last years of Akhenaten's reign, she vanishes from public view. No grand send-off, no tome, no mourning texts. Did she die young? Was she pushed out? Or was she about to become something greater? One day she's everywhere, etched into stone, praised in hymns, ruling beside a revolutionary king. And then, gone like a whisper in the desert. Around year 12 of Akhenaten's 17th-year reign, her name fades from inscriptions, her image disappears from the art. No tomb, no death announcement. For someone so central to Egypt's transformation, Her absence is a black hole in history. So, what happened to Nefertiti? The simplest theory is that she died, possibly in childbirth. Her second daughter, Meketaten, also vanishes from records about the same time, hinting at a double tragedy. But if that's true, why no lavish funeral or mourning monument? This was a woman revered like a goddess. A quiet death doesn't fit. Other theories are more political. Maybe she fell from favor, sidelined as Akhenaten became isolated, or as another consort rose in the royal court. Some suggest a co-ruler named Smenkhare briefly replaced her. Was Smenkhare a male heir, a brother, or actually Nefertiti ruling under a new name? That's the electrifying theory, that Nefertiti didn't disappear, but transformed, becoming Pharaoh herself as Neferneferuten. The evidence is thin, but tantalizing inscriptions using feminine grammar, references to Akhenaten as her husband. If true, she'd be in the rarest company, a female king like Hatshepsut. But even this story dissolves. Neferneferuten's reign ends suddenly, and then comes the name we all know, Tutankhaten. Later Tutankhamun, the boy king who would undo his parents' revolution and bring back the old gods. If Nefertiti ruled alone, it was brief. If she was Smenkhare or Neferneferuten, she was a ghost queen, visible only in hints, half-erased inscriptions, and broken relics. She's the missing piece in Egypt's greatest puzzle, and just like that, the most powerful woman in Egypt vanishes. But her legend was just starting to take shape. As the city of Amarna faded, a new figure emerged, a boy king named Tutankhaten, better known as Tutankhamun. He would become the world's most famous pharaoh, not for his reign, but for the treasures in his untouched tomb. But one question lingers: who was his mother? The records are frustratingly silent. His father was almost certainly Akhenaten, but his mother's identity is hotly debated. Some say Nefertiti was his stepmother, others argue she was his biological mother, based on timelines and family scenes in the art. If that's true, his early reign was clearly guided by someone experienced, someone steering the kingdom back to stability. Who was really in charge during Tutankhamun's childhood? He was about 9 when he became king. No way he restored Egypt's religious traditions alone. Was Nefertiti the power behind the throne, ruling from the shadows? Was it A, her possible father, the high priest, or both, working to erase the chaos of the Amarna years? One clue comes from a golden shrine in Tutankhamun's tomb, showing a woman anointing the young king. Her features look eerily like Nefertiti. If that was her, maybe she never truly vanished, but stayed at the heart of Egypt's power, quietly shaping history. Still, with no tomb, no mummy, we're left with fragments. If she guided Tutankhamun, her fingerprints are everywhere. But her name is gone, scrubbed from records as if someone tried to erase the memory of a woman who ruled like a god. The irony: Tutankhamun's fame brought Nefertiti back to life. In searching for his story, the world stumbled onto hers. For someone who stood at the center of Egypt's most radical era, queen, priestess, possible pharaoh, Nefertiti left no confirmed tomb, no funerary mask, no inscription telling her final story. It's as though she vanished into thin air. Egyptologists have obsessed over this for more than a century. In a culture that obsessed over the afterlife, where every noble was carefully mummified, how could one of the most powerful women just disappear? Some say she was buried hastily, her tomb destroyed or defaced by a vengeful new regime. Others think her tomb was never lost, just misidentified or still hidden. In 2015, radar scans of Tutankhamun's famous tomb suggested hidden chambers. Maybe Nefertiti's burial lies just beyond those walls. The world held its breath, but so far, nothing conclusive. Digs continue. Rumors swirl, but Nefertiti remains just out of reach, a queen sleeping beneath the sands, waiting to be found. Yet her absence echoes loudly. We have her image. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Her likeness captured in stone and color. Her world-famous bust in Berlin still gazes serenely across museum glass, as if she knows something we don't. One eye is unfinished, maybe on purpose, maybe just left that way. Even incomplete, she's timeless. The bust was discovered in 1912 by German archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt, buried in the ruins of the sculptor Thutmose's workshop at Amarna. The moment he brushed away the dust and saw that face, he knew it was special. In his diary he wrote, "No use describing it, you have to see it." And once the world did, Nefertiti became more than a historical figure. She became an icon of beauty, power, and ancient enigma. But even her bust is controversial. Germany acquired it during an era of questionable antiquities laws, and Egypt has demanded its return for decades. To Egyptians, she belongs home, in the land where she once walked beneath the sun's rays. But Germany refuses, citing her fragility, or, maybe, the museum crowds she draws. Nefertiti is their Mona Lisa. Wherever she is, Nefertiti's presence has changed how we see ancient women. She wasn't just a pretty face. Her bust radiates authority, intelligence, and maybe even a hint of challenge. She was a queen who made decisions, shaped history, and left an impression that survived even when everything else about her faded away. It's incredible how a single artifact, silent and still, can resurrect someone lost to time. We may never find her tomb. We may never know how she died. But as long as her image endures, Nefertiti's story is far from over. But through that legendary bust, Nefertiti pulled off something truly extraordinary. She achieved immortality, not in gold, but in memory. The face may be still, but the story it carries keeps echoing across centuries. Nefertiti's legacy lives somewhere between stone and silence, between what we actually know and what we desperately want to believe. Few ancient figures have inspired such endless fascination, or remained so mysterious. She's a paradox, one of the most depicted women of her age, yet still a mystery. Over time, she's been reimagined again and again, sometimes as a goddess in human form, the living ideal of beauty, sometimes as a brilliant political operator, the real power behind the throne, sometimes as a tragic romantic, lost in the sands of revolution, and sometimes as a shrewd survivor, navigating a collapsing empire with poise and calculation. But what do we really know? We know she was so much more than just a royal wife. Her image rivals that of kings. Her presence in religious rites, royal ceremonies, and even battle scenes tells us she wasn't just standing next to power, she was holding it. In a world ruled by men, Nefertiti carved out her own space, not through open rebellion, but with presence, poise, and mastery of her era's visual and spiritual language. We know she was at the absolute center of one of history's boldest religious revolutions. Akhenaten may have dreamed up the cult of Aten, but it was Nefertiti who gave it a human face. She became the living bridge between the sun god and the Egyptian people. She didn't just serve the gods, she embodied them, becoming the icon everyone looked to. And we know that after her disappearance, her legacy was all but erased. The backlash against Akhenaten's regime swept Nefertiti's name into oblivion. Her statues were destroyed, her inscriptions chiseled away, her role in history purposely buried. Yet here we are, 3,000 years later, still speaking her name. Why? Because myth survives even when facts are gone. Because when a woman is both an icon and an enigma, she slips into a space where time can't reach her. Sometimes the questions matter more than the answers. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly how Nefertiti wanted it to be remembered. Not explained, to be admired. Not contained, to live forever. Not just as a woman in a tomb, but as a queen of endless speculation. More than 3 millennia have passed since Nefertiti last walked under the Egyptian sun, but her shadow still stretches across the world, etched in museum glass, whispered through university halls, splashed across novels and documentaries. Unlike most historical figures, she hasn't faded into the background. If anything, she grows larger, more magnetic. There's something about her that pulls us in. It's not just the beauty. We've seen beauty before. It's the mystery. The empty spaces in her biography feel like a challenge, as if she's daring us to try and figure her out, knowing full well we never can. And that's why she's become more than just historic. She's archetypal. Each generation reimagines Nefertiti in its own image. In the early 20th century, she was cast as an exotic, mysterious queen. Later, she became a symbol of female power and resistance. Today, she's everything. A style icon, an African queen, a political player, maybe even a pharaoh. She's lived 1,000 afterlives, not through facts, but through imagination. Maybe that's the most fitting afterlife of all. In ancient Egypt, immortality wasn't just about mummification. It was about memory. If your name was spoken, your image seen, your story retold, you lived on. You could walk the fields of paradise, dine with the gods, exist beyond death. Nefertiti, by fate or by design, has achieved that. Her name is spoken across continents. Her face is one of the most recognized in history. Her story, even fractured, still commands attention. So, in the end, her greatest monument isn't a tomb or a mask. It's this endless curiosity. She left us the perfect mystery, a life half seen, half erased, fully unforgettable. Maybe that was her final act of power. Not just to rule an empire, not just to shape a religion, not just to raise royal daughters, but to become timeless. Nefertiti, the beautiful one who has come, never truly left. She survives in our questions, our wonder, our stubborn need to remember the women that history tried to forget. She lives, not in gold or glory, but in the eternal act of being searched for. And really, what could be more immortal than that? China, where the clouds hang low and the wind sighs through bamboo forests, is where a dragon lies coiled. But this dragon isn't a myth or a fire-breathing beast. It's made of earth and stone, shaped by centuries of calloused hands and patient vision. This is the Longji rice terraces, known to locals as the dragon's backbone, and its curves ripple across the mountainsides like scales gleaming with water, rice, and ancient pride. From a distance, the terraces look like a sleeping giant. Hills undulate with precise rhythm, each layer rising and falling like the muscles of a living creature. But if you step closer, you'll find something even more alive. Water whispering along hand-dug channels, seedlings fluttering in the breeze, and morning mist draping the land like the dragon's own breath. These terraces weren't built overnight. Their story began over 700 years ago, when the Zhuang and Yao peoples, ethnic minorities deeply connected to these mountains, chose to tame the slopes rather than abandon them. Flat land was scarce, machinery didn't exist, so they turned to the mountains with a simple question: how do we feed ourselves here? The answer took generations. With little more than stone tools and bamboo baskets, they carved the hills inch by inch, year by year. Every new level wasn't just a patch of farmland, it was a new way of teaching the land to breathe with its people. Rain became resource, slope became sustenance, and rice, life staple, began to thrive where gravity once ruled. Over time, the terraces began to resemble a dragon at rest, strong, eternal, sacred. This was more than agriculture, it was a pact between humans and nature. Nothing was wasted, nothing forced. Instead, the people worked with the earth, shaping it into curves and swells, listening to the wind, and following the water. Today, the dragon's backbone still feeds villages. But more than that, it reminds us what patience can build. In a world that moves ever faster, here lies a dragon that was never chased, only carved, layer by layer, dream by dream. To walk among the Longji terraces is to step into a landscape sculpted by persistence. There's no illusion here. No machine tracks, no survey markers. What stretches out is the fingerprint of human endurance. Every curve, every drop of water, every stone wall was shaped by hands that understood the mountain's pulse. Centuries ago, when the Zhuang and Yao first faced these steep slopes, they didn't see obstacles, they saw possibility. The valleys were already claimed, but up here, amid the rugged peaks, opportunity waited. If only the mountain could be made to listen. With no heavy tools, they began wooden shovels, stone hoes, baskets of mud, and rock hauled on weathered backs. Slowly, terraces formed, horizontal veins across the hills, held by hand, stacked stone walls. These weren't random cuts. Every level had to be perfectly balanced to hold water, to carry it from one terrace to the next without waste. One mistake, and an entire section could collapse. Too steep, and water would rush away. Too flat, and it would stagnate. So they measured not with rulers, but with generations of wisdom. Children learned from elders, elders watched the seasons, and slowly, the mountain yielded, never conquered, but convinced. The result, a landscape that seems to defy nature by flowing with it. From valley floor to cloud-kissed peaks, these terraces rise like a spiral staircase to the sky. They mirror the land's shape with an elegance that feels organic, as though the mountain itself decided to grow rice. But it was people, without engines or blueprints, just time, trial, and faith in the land. Today, the terraces are still alive, still farmed, still repaired, still respected. No bulldozers, no shortcuts. The old ways endure, not because they resist the future, but because they proved something rare: tradition, when rooted deep enough, can outlast every storm. If the dragon's backbone is all muscle and bone, then water is its blood. It flows quietly, without pumps or engines, tracing ancient channels from mountaintop springs down through every tier. This choreography is no accident. It's the secret life of the terraces, the reason they've survived for centuries. At the summit, rainwater and springs are gathered into narrow ditches and earth canals. From there, gravity takes over, guiding the water from one field to the next, nourishing every layer as it goes. This system, fluid, seamless, makes sure every patch of rice gets exactly what it needs. No more, no less. There are no fancy valves or switches, just simple gates made of wood or stone, carefully adjusted day after day by hand and habit. If one terrace overflows, the next could flood. If one leaks, others might run dry. So, the villagers, guardians of this delicate balance, walk the narrow ridges daily, listening, adjusting, watching the waters flow. It's less like farming, more like playing an instrument. One wrong note and the harmony is lost. But the water here does more than just feed rice. It mirrors the sky. In spring, when the terraces are first flooded, the fields turn to glass. They reflect the clouds, the sun, sometimes even the stars on a clear night. Visitors often say it feels surreal, like the mountains themselves have become a living mirror, holding both heaven and earth at once. Then, in summer, the water thickens with a sea of green. The reflections fade, replaced by the restless movement of rice plants swaying in the breeze. By autumn, the water glitters between golden stalks, and in winter, when the fields rest, snow and frost settle where water once flowed. The dragon sleeps, but its veins, the channels, wait, ready for spring's return. Time moves differently here, not by clocks but by moisture, by the first trickle of snowmelt, by the chorus of frogs, by the scent of wet earth. In a world obsessed with seconds, the people of Longji measure life in seasons and drops. The dragon lives not through fire and flight, but in the soft pulse of water, weaving through a masterpiece of stone and soil. Spring in the Longji Mountains doesn't begin with blossoms. It starts with water. As the snow melts high above, streams trickle down, breathing life into the waiting terraces. The mirror, like fields, are ready. The dragon stirs, and the people prepare for the ritual that connects them to every generation before planting the first seed. There's no grand announcement, just quiet movement at dawn. Farmers of all ages rise with the mist. They walk barefoot along the ridges, straw hats pulled low, baskets on their backs. The air is thick with the smell of soaked soil and mountain wind. The flooded paddies shimmer like polished jade. There are no machines here, never have been. Every rice seedling, raised in nursery beds, is transplanted by hand, one by one, row by row. Workers wade into the cold water, pressing each tender stalk into the mud with gentle, practiced hands. It's a rhythm that feels almost sacred, back bent, arm out, hand pressing, again and again, all day, sometimes for weeks. Children follow, splashing in the shallows, copying their elders. They learn not from books, but by standing in the water, feeling the mud, and learning the spacing by eye. Knowledge here isn't spoken, it's lived. Planting isn't just work, it's a ceremony. Offerings are made to the mountain spirits. Songs are sung. In some villages, elders scatter the first handful of seedlings as a blessing. Each field planted is a promise. To the land, to ancestors, to children yet to come. The pace is slow. No one rushes the dragon. No one hurries the mountain. The planting becomes a meditation, a slow dance of human and nature, patience and purpose. As the days pass, green shoots begin to rise from the watery fields like gentle murmurs. From this moment on, the terraces will grow, not just rice, but hope. Each seed is a prayer. Each row, a quiet defiance against hunger and haste. The cycle begins again, not with noise or fire, but with hands in mud and hearts in the sky. The dragon is awake, the mountain breathes, and the future is planted, one seed at a time. Scattered along the ridgelines and tucked into the crooks of the terraces are the heartbeats of the dragon's backbone. Villages like Pingen, Dozai, and Jinking. These aren't just settlements, they're living museums of heritage, every home, path, and balcony clinging to the mountain like memories that refuse to fade. Houses are built from timber, perched on stilts to keep out rain and match the steepness of the slope. Their rooftops, dark and slanted, echo the lines of the terraces below. From above, they look like lanterns floating on a green sea. Inside, life is simple, warm, and deeply communal. Multiple generations share a single home. Meals are cooked over wood fires. The smell of rice wine and bamboo smoke drifts through the air. The people here belong to ethnic minorities, the Zhuang and the Red Yao, each with their own language, customs, and stories. You'll recognize Ya women instantly, their long black hair, uncut since childhood, coiled elegantly atop their heads. Sometimes, they let it fall like a silk waterfall as they bathe in the river, a scene so graceful it feels like legend. Even as modern life creeps up the mountain trails, tradition remains strong. Clothes are still hand-woven and dyed deep indigo. Wooden looms creak in quiet rooms. Music floats from reed pipes and bronze drums during festivals. Weddings are marked by ritual dances, and the harvest is always welcomed with song. Hospitality isn't a business transaction here, it's a reflex. Guests are offered tea brewed from local leaves, rice wine in carved gourds, and stories from elders who remember the mountain before electricity. They speak of dragons in the mist, ancestors who first carved the hills, and spirits who still watch over the fields. Tourism now brings visitors from all over the world, but village life moves at its own pace. The rice still grows, rituals still mark the seasons. The terraces, like the people, endure, not by resisting change, but by absorbing it slowly and carefully, like water flowing down the mountain. Here, within the dragon's coils, life is never rushed. It fleckos, it remembers. To walk the terraces of Longji is to walk through layers of myth. These hills are not just soil and stone. They're alive with stories, whispered through bamboo and carried by the wind. For the villagers, these mountains are sacred beings, shaped by gods, guarded by spirits, and filled with tales passed down through generations. The most enduring legend is of a sleeping dragon whose body stretches across the ridges. Its spine rises in coils. The terraces themselves. Locals say the curves of the mountain aren't man-made, but the dragon's scales, rising and falling with its breath. When mist rolls in from the valley and cloaks the fields, it's said the dragon is stirring, breathing softly in its sleep. Another story tells of how the terraces were born from heavenly kindness. In a time of famine, the ancestors climbed the mountains and prayed to the sky. Moved by their faith, the gods sent rain and told them to carve the hills into steps for rice. The people obeyed, and the dragon appeared to guide their hands. Ever since, they honor the mountain, never shouting in the fields, never cutting trees without prayer. These beliefs aren't written in books. They live in the songs sung during planting, in incense burned before a new season, in the hush that settles on misty mornings. Children grow up with these tales not as fantasy, but as truth rooted in the land. To laugh at the dragon is to risk a poor harvest. To disrespect the spirits is to invite flood or drought. There are spirits in the water, too. Some farmers still make offerings before releasing the spring water into the terraces each year. A few drops of rice wine, a whispered prayer. Not for show, but as natural as tying your shoes. And whether you believe in dragons or not, something sacred lingers here. Maybe it's the silence, maybe it's the clouds, or maybe it's the quiet certainty that this place is more than human effort. It's a story still being written, not in ink, but in stone, water, and rice. For centuries, the dragon's backbone was a secret, remote, quiet, known only to those who lived there. But no place, however sacred, stays hidden forever. The road came. Power lines followed. Tourists and smartphones made the climb, and the terraces, ancient, patient, faced a new question: how do you survive the modern world? At first, there was fear. Some worried that the mountain would be sold off, that concrete would replace wood, and culture would become costume. But the people of Longji didn't just endure, they adapted, not by abandoning the past, but by weaving the present into it, one careful thread at a time. Villagers opened their homes to guests, not as hotels, but as family stays. Visitors eat local food, sticky rice steamed in bamboo, wild greens picked at dawn. They sleep in wooden stilt houses where roosters still call the morning. The experience isn't staged, it's lived, honest, real, and the farming, it continues. Each season, locals still flood the terraces, plant by hand, and harvest with sickles worn smooth by time. Children go to school by day, but help in the fields at dusk. Tourism brings income, but rice brings life. One supports the other. Both are essential. Some young villagers leave for the cities, but many return, drawn back by the slow, powerful rhythm of the dragon's backbone. There's a quiet magnetism to the terraces, something deeper than nostalgia or scenery. It's in the sound of water slipping through channels, the way stars shimmer in flooded paddies, the patience the mountains teach simply by existing. Yes, local festivals are louder now. You'll see microphones where once there were only drums, and signs in Mandarin and English standing beside sacred springs. But the rituals still happen. Offerings are still made. Elders still lead the songs. The dragon's backbone didn't resist change. It absorbed it, gracefully, with balance. The terraces endure not because they're frozen in time, but because they breathe with time, flexing, adapting, never breaking. In an age where tradition so often gets bulldozed for the sake of progress, Longji stands as gentle proof that progress and heritage can walk together. The old ways still have a place, especially when they're this beautiful. The dragon's backbone is never the same place twice. Each season, it sheds its skin, changes its colors, shifts its spirit. Cities may change in years, but the terraces change in weeks, draped not just in sunlight, but in rhythm. To stand here for a year is to watch a mountain breathe. Spring arrives as a mirror. The terraces are flooded for planting, and the still water reflects the sky like polished silver. Clouds drift both above and beneath your feet. Visitors say it's like walking through heaven. The fields look empty, but life is stirring under the surface. Summer is a burst of green. Rice shoots stretch tall, covering the hills in an emerald cascade. From afar, the terraces look like veldt ribbons, winding in every direction. The air is humid and alive with croaking frogs. Farmers, knee-deep in water, work from dawn to dusk, their hats bobbing like tiny sails across a jade sea. Autumn is gold and abundance. The rice ripens and the terraces catch fire in the sunlight, glowing with grain. The fields ripple in the wind, and drums echo through the villages. Families gather. Songs fill the air. Sticky rice is cooked and shared. It's not just a harvest, it's a celebration. The dragon, fully awake, offers its bounty. Winter draws the mountain into silence. The terrace is empty and the water drains away. Sometimes snow falls, dusting the steps in white. Sometimes frost clings to the walls like lace. The fields are quiet. No tools, no voices, just the dragon's gentle sleep. Each season writes a different poem. Spring reflects, summer grows, autumn feeds, winter rests. The beauty of Longji isn't just in its shape, but in its cycle, in how it welcomes time without resistance, in how it transforms quietly, never needing to announce itself. Photographers chase the light here, hoping to capture something eternal. But the terraces never freeze for anyone. They move, they breathe, they teach us, softly, that beauty isn't static. It's a rhythm, a practice, a promise renewed with every season. And so the dragon turns again, not with roar or flame, but with water, grain, and wind. In the end, the terraces are more than fields. They are a vow, quiet, curved, carved into the mountainside. A promise passed down hand to hand, season to season, generation to generation. The dragon's backbone is not just a feat of agriculture or an engineering marvel. It's a story of what happens when humans choose to live with the land, not against it. There were easier paths. The ancestors of Longji could have moved to the valleys, sought flatter earth, but they stayed. They studied the slopes, listened to the stone, followed the water, and in doing so, made the impossible ordinary. Feeding villages on mountainsides, every curve holds a lesson, not just about rice, but about patience, legacy, and care. These terraces weren't built in years or decades, but over centuries. There is no shortcut to harmony, no machine that can duplicate the knowledge etched into each stone wall by calloused hands and quiet persistence. Yet, nothing here is frozen. The terraces are alive. They evolve. They bend with the weather, the needs of the people, the shape of the world. That's their secret. They were never rigid. They've always been fluid. Even now, as the modern world wins its way up the hills with cell towers and screens, the terraces remain rooted. They change, but they do not vanish, because their roots are not just in soil. They're in story, in ritual, in the simple, enduring act of planting a seed and trusting the sky. To walk the dragon's backbone is to witness a contract between humans and the earth, a pact signed with sweat and sun, renewed every harvest. It's a reminder that progress doesn't always mean speed, and that greatness doesn't always roar. Sometimes it murmurs like a stream slipping over stone. Maybe that's why the terraces speak so deeply to us, from farmers to travelers to dreamers, because they represent something we've nearly forgotten, that the most lasting things in this world aren't built with force, but with rhythm, humility, and time. The dragon sleeps, the people endure, and the mountain remembers. Most visitors to Giza lift their eyes to the sky, drawn to the silhouettes of the pyramids and the stare of the Great Sphinx. But few wonder what lies beneath, under the sand, under the Nile, buried by centuries of forgotten currents. Near the ancient village of Abarowash, just beyond the Giza Plateau, a strange story stirs. It whispers of something gigantic, eroded, and mostly ignored, an underwater sphinx. Local fishermen have talked about it for generations, a smooth-backed shape, too symmetrical to be just a rock, a feline form half buried in mud and silt. When the Nile recedes in drought, parts of it rise. Stone curves, grooves, what some say is a carved paw, impossibly worn but still recognizable as human work. You won't find this spot on any tour. There are no signs, no crowds, no buzzes, just reeds, brackish water, and silence. Explorers who've gone there say the land feels different, charged, as if memory itself clings to it. Beneath the murky water, sonar scans have picked up geometric patterns and what look like intentionally placed blocks. But most intriguing are the claims that this sphinx-like figure might predate the pyramids. Not by years, but by millennia. If real, it would upend everything we think we know about Egyptian history. The mainstream story says the Great Sphinx dates to around 2500 BCE, but this submerged form, if truly carved, could belong to a time when the Sahara was still green and the Nile ran wild through a lusher world. Of course, skeptics dismiss it as a misread rock, limestone shaped by water and wishful thinking. They point to nature's ability to mimic intent. Wind and water are powerful sculptors, but the grooves, the symmetry, the celestial alignment all spark more questions than answers. The site remains unexcavated. Official archaeologists mostly ignore it. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's everything. A relic not just of Egypt's past, but of a world lost to flood and time. For now, the so-called underwater sphinx waits, silent beneath the water. And if it could speak, you have to wonder what secrets it would share, and why so many seem determined not to listen. The legend of the underwater sphinx moved from local folklore to worldwide curiosity in the 1980s, when independent researchers and divers began publishing mysterious reports. A massive lion-bodied figure, partially submerged near Giza. Early photos were blurry, easily dismissed, but they sparked something that couldn't be put back: curiosity and a dangerous kind of doubt. One of the first outspoken believers was an amateur Egyptologist who swore he'd seen a weathered monument deep beneath silt and flood layers during a rare drought. He claimed the figure wasn't a random rock, but a work of geometry, legs, symmetry, even the faint shape of a face. Naturally, this rocked the established narrative. Egyptology as a field depends on timelines, structure, and evidence. Almost all scholars put the Sphinx and pyramids at around 2500 BCE, during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. The suggestion of another, older, a partially submerged sphinx would mean rethinking not just Egyptian history, but the story of civilization itself. Mainstream archaeologists responded with caution, even skepticism. Without peer-reviewed digs, carbon dating, or solid stratigraphy, the claim couldn't be taken seriously. Many argued that the so-called underwater sphinx was just a natural formation, sculpted by thousands of years of Nile floods and sediment. In Egypt, nature often mimics intent. Yet, the photos kept spreading. Sonar readings continue to find odd, regular patterns, too smooth, too ordered, too suggestive. And then came the theorists, authors, filmmakers, fringe historians, all building stories around this mystery. Some say the Sphinx, above and below, might be a relic of a forgotten civilization, maybe Atlantean, maybe pre-dynastic Egyptian, lost to a flood that swept the Sahara clean. They point to water erosion on the original Sphinx, argue for lost knowledge, and hint that what lies beneath the Nile might be far older than accepted memory allows. The debate only grew more intense, but the earth itself stayed quiet. No official excavation was approved. No museum staked a claim, and the so-called underwater Sphinx, if that's what it truly is, remained where it always had, hidden in mud and myth, trapped between speculation and silence. The idea that something near Giza could predate the pyramids isn't just a bold claim, it's revolutionary. If this monument is more than just a trick of erosion, then Egypt's story doesn't start with the 4th dynasty. It starts much earlier, back in a time when the Sahara was lush and green, and the Nile ran wild and unpredictable. That possibility gained serious attention in the 1990s after geologist Dr. Robert Schoch studied the Great Sphinx. He argued that the deep, Vertical weathering on the Sphinx's enclosure wasn't caused by wind or sand, but by heavy, sustained rainfall. Rainfall the Giza Plateau hasn't seen since at least 7000 BCE. If true, that pushes the Sphinx's origins back by thousands of years, well before the earliest pharaohs. So if water shaped the original Sphinx, could it also have hidden an even older sibling nearby? The supposed underwater Sphinx rests in a lower region near ancient floodplains. Satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar have hinted at possible foundations, rectangular outlines, and deliberate shaping, all buried under silt and seasonal water. These signs suggest the site may not just be older than the Sphinx we know. It may come from a time before Egypt even had a written language. Supporters of this theory point to Egypt's missing chapters, the gap between the end of Ice Age and the rise of the first dynasties. During this mysterious era, the Nile shifted its course, the Sahara dried up, and civilizations may have come and gone, undocumented and erased. The idea that ancient, pre-literate people could have built a monument of this scale seems far-fetched to many historians. But is it really? After all, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey was built around 9600 BCE by hunter-gatherers, and its massive pillars and carvings predate Stonehenge by thousands of years. Could Egypt also have a secret this old? A culture that marked the land with stone long before papyrus carried any names. If the underwater Sphinx was built in such an age, it would change everything we know about ancient humanity. It would point to lost civilizations and a forgotten era, one that might have inspired the builders of Giza, not through myth, but through a literal monument, drowned and then forgotten. Stone doesn't lie, stone remembers. Around the site of the rumored underwater Sphinx, the landscape tells a quiet but persistent story, not just of time, but of water. Sediment layers, erosion marks, and flood patterns all hint at a history stretching back before the desert sands took over, before the Nile settled into its familiar path, before the first pharaohs carved their legacy in stone. Geologists who've examined photos and data from near Abu Rawash observe odd erosion marks, smooth, rounded grooves that suggest years of flowing water. Not wind, not sand, but rainfall and movement forces unseen in this region for thousands of years. The same argument has been made about the Great Sphinx itself, especially its enclosure wall. Deep vertical fissures that mimic the effects of prehistoric rain, not desert winds. At the possible underwater Sphinx site, we see the same signature, only now hidden beneath a shallow flood basin. When the Nile runs low or during rare excavations, parts of the structure are said to rise into view. Lion-like haunches, shoulders, and a base that looks too level to be natural. Researchers note that the basin is geologically active, with high clay content and evidence of wild swings in ancient water tables. The stone is worn, but not randomly. The erosion follows the shape of the supposed monument, suggesting it was carved, then drowned. Some sediment layers date to the early Holocene, when Egypt was wetter, greener, and suffered massive floods. If a monument was built then, it could have stood for centuries before vanishing beneath the mud, lost to shifting populations and buried by the Nile's wandering silt. Skeptics say it's all coincidence. Natural shapes mistaken for human work, wishful thinking chasing shadows. But water doesn't create symmetry. It doesn't carve out, pause, or lay down foundations in geometric patterns that echo a known Sphinx just a few miles away. So the question deepens: if water erased this monument from view, what else did it wash away? How much more of history is still hidden beneath the Nile surface? If the underwater Sphinx really does exist, ancient, carved, and silent, why hasn't it been excavated? Why is it still buried in mud and uncertainty, passed over by archaeologists and ignored by governments? The answer, like the monument, lies beneath the surface. Egypt's archaeological institutions are fiercely protective, and for good reason. The nation guards its heritage with strict rules, demanding consensus, permits, funding, and, above all, ironclad evidence before any major dig. And there's an unspoken rule: don't rewrite Egypt's history without proof so overwhelming it can't be denied. That's the crux of the problem. The underwater Sphinx has never received an official, state-sponsored excavation. Independent researchers and fringe academics have studied the area, but without formal backing. Their findings remain tantalizing but inconclusive. And then there's the Nile itself. The river is never still. It floods, recedes, and shifts over decades. The alleged monument site is flood-prone, often underwater for much of the year. Excavating it would mean draining the area, rerouting water, protecting the local ecosystem, and managing the structural risks from centuries of sediment pressure. That alone could take years. Then there are the politics. A discovery this big would disrupt more than academic timelines. It could challenge national pride, open established narratives, and bring a media circus that Egypt's authorities may not welcome. The Ministry of Antiquities prefers discoveries that reinforce Egypt's grandeur, not those that threaten to append its foundational story. Some whisper that certain officials may already know more than they share, that quiet studies have been done behind closed doors. But without public records, peer-reviewed data, or official announcements, those rumors drift into conspiracy, so the monument remains hidden. Whether by chance or by choice, it lies under mud and skepticism, a strange irony in a land so obsessed with preserving its ancient past. One of its greatest mysteries may be hiding in plain sight, unclaimed and untouched by the official record. But nothing stays buried forever. To the ancient Egyptians, the Sphinx was never just a statue. It was a symbol, part guardian, part god, part eternal riddle. With the body of a lion and the head of a man, the Sphinx represented strength fused with wisdom, physical power ruled by intellect. It was a cosmic sentinel, placed at the threshold where the divine met the mortal. The most famous, of course, is the Great Sphinx of Giza, towering 66 feet high. It's watched over the plateau for over 4,000 years, facing the rising sun, guarding the tombs of kings. Its true origin is still debated. Some say it was built by Khufu. Others argue it's older, its face recarved through time. So what would it mean if a second Sphinx, hidden, water-worn, possibly older, exists just miles away? It would change everything. No ancient record mentions twin sphinxes at Giza. Ancient texts are silent. But in later Greco-Roman tradition, there are stories of paired guardians, flanking sacred spaces. In Egyptian architecture, symmetry is sacred. Temples often have twin statues, twin obelisks, twin avenues of lions. Why not twin sphinxes? Some researchers argue the underwater sphinx isn't a copy, but an original, a prototype, a pre-dynastic version later echoed on a grander scale. If true, it means the idea of the sphinx didn't begin with the pharaohs, but with a forgotten culture whose myths were carried forward, refined, and reimagined. And if this monument predates writing, it's not bound by any pharaoh's ideology. Its purpose could have been astronomical, ritualistic, or commemorative, a marker of a flood, an event, or a lost god. The lion shape is no accident. In ancient Egypt, lions marked the horizon, the gate of dawn and dusk. A sphinx facing east watches the sun's rebirth forever. To carve one is to freeze that sacred moment in stone. Now imagine one carved before the pyramids, guarding, waiting. It wouldn't just rewrite history. It would redefine the mythos of Egypt, not as the birthplace of civilization, but as the last echo of something even older. Absolutely beautiful summary, and a powerful meditation on the paradox of mystery and memory. Here's a concise, poetic threading of your themes, ready for essay, article, or documentary voiceovering, and the fact that this symbol might be sleeping beneath water. How fitting for a guardian of lost worlds. As whispers of the underwater sphinx spread across continents, they reveal a divide deeper than stone or silt. On one side stands traditional Egyptology, careful, structured, and rooted in consensus. On the other, a growing chorus, independent researchers, alternative historians, and restless minds, who sense that something extraordinary is being overlooked. Mainstream scholars insist on evidence-seeking stratigraphy, inscriptions, radiocarbon dates. Their caution is not without cause. In Egypt, natural rock masquerades as beast and king, and one misstep can turn science into myth. The past is fragile. Once broken by hasty hands or hungry headlines, it cannot be restored. Yet some argue that caution has become complacency. Independent investigators, some trained in science or engineering, but outsiders to archaeology, point to satellite images showing symmetry, to LIDR revealing rectangular foundations, to patterns in stone that seem less like chaos, more like intent. They question the politics of silence. They wonder if the fear is not of fraud, but of rewriting everything: timelines, textbooks, even national identity. So the underwater sphinx becomes more than a rumor. Books, documentaries, podcasts, and conferences now raise it as banner and battleground, a symbol of hidden history and the tension between curiosity and caution. Supporters call for open excavation. Skeptics warn against pseudoscience. The truth, as always, remains buried, lost in a silt of voices as thick as the Nile's mud. This debate isn't just academic, it's emotional. It asks how we approach the past. Do we trust only what's confirmed, or follow the hints that beckon from just beyond reach? The underwater Sphinx isn't just a stone or a story. It's a litmus test for how curious we're allowed to be. As long as it remains unearthed, both sides will argue above a monument that says nothing, yet might change everything. There is something haunting about a mystery buried in plain sight, especially when it wears the face of a lion and stares up from the mud with ancient silence. The so-called underwater Sphinx of Giza may or may not be real, but its pull is undeniable. It stirs not only the urge to discover, but the longing to remember. The sense that, beneath every ruin, there is something we've lost. Civilizations vanish beneath waves, sand, and ash. We look to the past not just for answers, but for identity. If the underwater Sphinx is real, if it was shaped by hands before history, then it's more than a relic. It's a voice from a chapter we never read, a marker from an age when people measured stars differently, honored the earth more intimately, and carried a mythology we can only guess at. Some believe it belongs to a lost world, a culture erased by water or time. Whether or not that's true, the emotional gravity remains. To imagine a monument carved before the pyramids, submerged and forgotten, is to confront how fragile civilization truly is. That's why the story persists. It reminds us that empires are temporary, that even stone can disappear if the river flows long enough. More importantly, it reminds us discovery is not over. Earth still holds secrets not written in textbooks. In an era of instant answers, the underwater Sphinx is a rare thing, an unanswered question, a possibility, a mystery unclaimed by drone or database. And whether it proves to be natural rock or a forgotten monument, it already has value, because it makes us wonder. Wonder if the past is deeper than we thought. Wonder if myth preserves memory. Wonder what lies just beneath the surface, waiting for someone to listen. The underwater Sphinx of Giza, whether carved or accidental, confirmed or dismissed, remains where it has always been. Beneath the mud, beneath the water, beneath the weight of time. It has no plaque, no name, no spotlight, and yet it speaks softly in the absence of answers. For every monument unearthed in Egypt, there are others still hidden. Some are too fragile to disturb, others are drowned beneath the shifting Nile, and a few, like this one, sit in plain view, ignored not for lack of importance, but because they ask questions we're not ready to answer. Maybe that's the underwater Sphinx's true power, not its size or age, but its silence. It forces us to confront the limits of what we know, and the discomfort of what we overlook. In truth, it may never be excavated. Politics, funding, and tradition form walls taller than any tomb, but that doesn't make it irrelevant. Quite the opposite. Its obscurity has made it a mirror, reflecting what we choose to remember and what we choose to forget. History is not a closed book, it's a living puzzle, scattered across landscapes and shorelines, waiting for a shift in tide, a change in thinking, a brave question to unsettle the dust. Perhaps someday the water will recede, and the full form will rise, paws, face, and all. Perhaps radar will reveal what myth has long suspected, or perhaps the mystery will linger, passed from generation to generation, a whisper between stones. But whether monument or mirage, the underwater Sphinx has already served its greatest purpose. It stirs the imagination, and in a world drowning in certainty, that may be its greatest gift. Because maybe the most ancient things aren't just buried in sand or time. Maybe they're buried in us, in our need to explore, to remember, to wonder if, somewhere beneath the water or the desert, the past still breathes and waits to be found.